Okay, let me just unmute you.
Okay, madam. So let's humble ourselves. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Carl.
Okay. Um. Okay, let me pray. Let's humble. Dear God, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you so much, Father, that you have brought us to this lesson. As it is to start, please guide us, give us the knowledge and wisdom to understand whatever our teacher is going to teach us. We pray that may you guide teacher Christine, help her in this lesson. Give her the strength, my Father. Let her give us the best, Father, as we also attend. Open our understandings, Father. And whatever we learn, I pray that we also put it into our understanding and into practice. We thank you so much. Guide us, lead us. I pray and I believe. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Carl, for that beautiful prayer. And surely we believe that the Lord will guide us throughout the lesson. I don't know why I'm seeing other people's hands up. Nina, I don't know why your hand is up. Okay. All right. You see, patience pays. We said at least a number of 650 and above. And at least I'm seeing that we are already 62. That is really good. Okay, so as I promised on Monday, um, we were supposed to look at a bit of functional writing and creative writing. So I think let me start with creative writing. Then I'll go to functional writing. It's a bit wide. And I hope you will all be really able to learn something. So when you talk about creative writing, just from the word creative, it means that you write for creativity. So I'm going to share my screen, but please, class, I request that if you're here and you have come to disorganize my screen, kindly leave the class. You cannot waste your time to come here and disorganize my screen. On Monday, some of you really disappointed me so much. So in case you're here and you want to disorganize my screen, I request that you leave this class. You better go and sleep or do something else. Okay. I hope you can now see my screen. Okay, so when you talk about creative writing, it's in simple terms, it's a form of writing where creativity is at the forefront of its purpose through using imagination, creativity, and innovation in order to tell a story. So when you talk about creative writing, it has to do with imagination. You know, where you sit down, you're given a paper to write about something. You imagine that something happened and you write about it. So for you to do that, you need to be creative and you need to be innovative. So when you talk about creativity, it's simply playing around with language to come out with a very good essay or a very good composition. And while innovation is simply uh, coming out with a new idea. For instance, if you're given a scenario and you interpret the scenario in a way that you write about a dream that you had, maybe you didn't have that dream, but you're just imagining and then creatively writing about it. So the innovation is that you didn't have that dream, but you're out of creativity, you're able to write that you had a dream, and maybe in that dream you went to heaven and then you came back and all those things. Or someone can even write that maybe maybe you went to the moon, like imagine something unique and write about it. That is creativity. So we say that creative writing is a form of artistic expression that draws on imagination to convey meaning through the use of imagery, narrative, and drama. So when you talk about a form of artistic expression, anything that is artistic is something that has been creatively done, and it draws on imagination to convey meaning through the use of imagery, vivid description, and other things. So we have different types of creative writing. I'm not going to go into the different types, but we have what we call expository, descriptive, narrative, and persuasive. Another common ones, the ones that we do at school mostly, are descriptive and the narrative, whereby descriptive is simply using adjectives to describe something or to give more information about something, while a narrative is actually simply narrating or telling a story of something that happened. An example of a narrative is, for example, if you are asked to maybe write about a visit to your ancestral village, you can just narrate and say that this is what happened along the way. You're narrating a story that happened. While descriptive, even that still, when you look at the visit to your ancestral village, it could even be a descriptive writing where you describe every event in details. And for you to describe every event in details, you need to use um adjectives, you need to use figures of speech. Figures of speech involves similes, metaphors, personification, etc. In simple terms, that's what I'm going to say. So I'm going to scroll down because going into the details might really take a lot of our time. Okay, so when we talk about creative writing, there is a format that we follow when writing creatively. So the first thing is we have the title. Every form of writing in English language, must have what we call a title. And a title is always written in capital letters. And when you look at creative writing, we write the title in the middle, not from the margin, but we write it in the middle. Then after that, we have what we call the introduction. So with the introduction, you tell us, like, for example, you're writing about, uh, let me use a visit to your ancestral village or ancestral home. So introduction is what happened. How did you know that you're going to visit your ancestral home? So there you have the introduction. You're telling us what happened. And in the introduction, we are able to see some of the characters. We're able to see we're able to see the setting. Maybe you're in the living room or you're in the sitting room, and your mother informs all of you that the following day you're visiting your ancestral village or your ancestral home. So that is the introduction. So the introduction usually is one paragraph. Then after that, you go to what we call the body. So the body is broken down into different paragraphs. I know that some of you, this is just a reminder of what your teachers taught you at school. So with the body, it's simply the details of what happened. So the following, after you introducing us that you're going to your ancestral village, what happened the following day? You can say that we woke up very early, or it was a very chilly morning that day, but still we had to travel to our ancestral village. What happened along the way? When you reach there, what did you find out? Did you find about who your relatives are? What is your clan? How are the people there? How do the people behave? How do your relatives behave? Talk about the food. You're giving the details. But when you're giving the details, you ensure that every idea is on its own paragraph. And here we talk about indented paragraphs. And I think, I don't know whether I mentioned that for a paragraph, for a good paragraph should not have more than 7 lines. It should, a good paragraph is supposed to have at most 7 lines. I know I'm going to show you a sample of a good paragraph, but it should not have more than, the moment you have more than 7 lines in a paragraph, then you know that you have a very long paragraph. That is why sometimes your teachers put such a, let me just illustrate this. This is in Word. Let me just do that. I don't know whether you can see, but your teachers do that to show you that you should have gone to the next paragraph, or to show you that your paragraph is very long. And class, the moment you have a very long paragraph, you will miss out a mark on paragraphing, because for creative writing, for format, we give a mark on title. And actually, I'm supposed to add here paragraphing. So there is a mark on the title and paragraphing. So the moment you have very long paragraphs, then you miss a mark on paragraphing, which is very important because format carries 2 scores. You have title and paragraphing. So it's very important as a student to be alert when writing, so that you don't have very long paragraphs. And also build your paragraphs in a way that at least it's not a plain paragraph. Use new words. Use new words meaning vocabulary. Use extraordinary adjectives, not just normal or ordinary adjectives. Instead of maybe instead of saying something is huge, you can say it was enormous, it was maybe gigantic. You know, play just as, I don't know what you're looking for in my screen. Please behave. So build your ideas in a paragraph very well so that you get good scores, so that you're also able to get the mark on register and vocabulary. We are going to see that. Then after, so the body can have, so if you're writing, I'm assuming that you're using a paper, the normal foolscap. So if you're writing on a normal foolscap, we expect to see at least 5 paragraphs on a foolscap. But in most cases, some students only have 2 paragraphs on a foolscap, 3 paragraphs. So it means that your paragraphs are very long. So learn to break your ideas into smaller paragraphs, or break your ideas down so that you have every idea on its own paragraph. Then after that, we have what we call the conclusion. So in simple terms, I know many of you know what the conclusion simply means. You bring to an end what you've been discussing. And here you can use a proverb, you can use a wise saying, you can use a quote to conclude. For instance, maybe some people, maybe you've had people talk about your ancestral village, and they talk about your ancestral village in a very good way, you know, in a very appetizing way, like, you know, eh? So here, maybe when you went to the village, you found out that maybe your ancestral village is not actually what people, or what you hear people talk about. So you can say that not all that glitters is gold, or don't judge a book by its cover. Or you can even say east or west, home is the best if you had a good experience. So that is how you're supposed to conclude. So concluding meaning summarize all the ideas that you had, and you can summarize that by saying that all in all, maybe I enjoyed my visit to my ancestral home, and I was able to learn that really not all that glitters, that maybe I was able to learn that maybe east or west home is good. Or it's maybe someone says that maybe in conclusion, my visit to my ancestral home was one of the worst experiences I've ever had. I don't know, I'm seeing Simon's hand is up. Maybe let me pick some questions before I continue. I'm just going through the chat. Okay, I think let me first pick the hands because I'm seeing, yes, Simon, I've asked you to unmute. Baswale,
Yes, good evening, madam.
good evening.
Madam, is it okay if I use idioms as I can?
Very true. Yes, you can use.
Okay, it's my pleasure.
Okay. I'm seeing Cassandra.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
Well, my question is that when I exceed the 7 lines in the paragraph, am I actually marked wrong?
Mm-hmm. No, you're not marked wrong, but you will miss a
Mm.
mark on paragraphing.
How about if I write very less and in a paragraph I've written like two lines, 2 to 3 lines?
Then that is a very short paragraph. That is not a paragraph.
Okay,
It is a
thank you,
very short
madam.
paragraph, and still you will miss a mark on paragraphing.
Okay, thank you. That was my concern.
Agree?
Madam, for me, I'm not getting you. I'm not even hearing anything.
I don't know why. Maybe you look for a clear network because other people are able to hear me.
Good evening,
Agree?
madam. Like I was asking if in one line, because you've said we don't have to exceed the seven lines in a paragraph. Like, is it proper when I use over 10 words in one line so that I make my paragraph shorter?
Come on.
Like you said, you don't have to to go beyond 7 lines in a paragraph. Eh?
Mm.
And maybe what I'm talking about is much more. Is it possible for me to use more than 10 words in one line so that I make my paragraph shorter, maybe for like 5 to 4 lines?
Agree. I don't
Or
know
there are
what you've
some mistakes in
understood,
the words.
but I said that when you look at a paragraph has a number of sentences. So you cannot have a sentence, and also the sentences should not also be very long. The sentences you need to punctuate your sentences. So a paragraph has a number of sentences. So a number of the sentences are the ones that form the lines. Let me say that. But of course, your sentences should not also be very, very long. I see Elijah. Elijah. Let me have Roy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So my question is, how many paragraphs are needed?
It is hard for me to answer that question because it depends on what you are writing. It depends actually with what it depends. If you're writing an essay, I feel let me see, three, maybe you can have like 5, 6, like 8 paragraphs. I don't know. Depending actually on what you're writing, Roy, I can't dictate on the number of paragraphs that you must have. Because in most cases, students are supposed to write 1.5, a page and a half. Yes, so a page and a half. So you can see. But I think like eight paragraphs. But depending, I wouldn't want to really dictate on the number of paragraphs that you should have. Yes.
Excuse me, madam. Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
Madam, I would like you to highlight me more about the introductory part of it, which is the introduction after the title.
Okay, just as I've had that. Then there is a nobody. Kindly, you cannot be a nobody and you're in this class. And
Good evening, madam.
good evening.
Madam, I just want to know, like, what is the minimum number of lines in a paragraph?
I think I talked about that. I said at most 7. But actually 6 is recommended, but at most 7. If you must write a lot, then it should be not more than 7.
What about, like, at least? It must be at least what?
At least 6. Don't also have less than 6 because the paragraph will then be very short.
Okay, thank you, madam.
You're welcome. Safra, lastly.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
Madam, like I'd like to ask, take an example of a job application. Is it also a creative writing? And if it is a creative writing, like no matter those writings should be always short, but sometimes you find that the information you have to put in is too long. So is
Okay.
it okay for the job application or for any formal letter to have something like 5 paragraphs or 6?
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Safra.
Okay.
That is a beautiful question. But when you look at an application letters are not part of creative writing. Letters are part of functional writing. Okay, I don't know, Travis, do you have a burning question? Okay, Travis.
Good evening, teacher.
Good evening.
Yeah, my question is, how many paragraphs are composition?
Travis, I've just talked about that. Please pay attention. You can actually type some of those questions in the chat. Your friends will help you answer because I've already talked about that. So I request that you pay attention. Michael.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
Teacher, I never picked you clear in the conclusion part. I don't know whether you can repeat for me once more.
Okay. Let me just go through the chat. How many words are recommended in a line? In a line, you can have like, I don't know, maybe even 10 words, but of course you break down the word. You use words to form sentences. I'm not hearing. I don't know why you're not hearing. I think it's your network. Yeah, so the introduction and the conclusion, use 1 paragraph for introduction and 1 paragraph for conclusion. For the body, you can have like 8, maybe 7 or 8, depending actually on what you're writing, Angel. Someone is saying my voice is not clear at some point. Sorry about that. Could be its network. Someone is asking for the timetable. Maybe someone can get the WhatsApp. I don't know whether Ruth, in case you're here, kindly get the link to the WhatsApp group and post it here so that people can join the WhatsApp group. Yes, you can conclude with a wise saying. Someone is asking that. Do they matter even on spellings? My dear, yes. I'm going to talk about all those things. So some of the questions that you're asking, I'm going to talk about them. So I say that with the introduction, someone asked about introduction. And I remember saying that when it comes to the introduction, here you're simply now introducing us to the setting. And I know as per now, you know what setting is. You're introducing us to some of the characters. For example, like I still use an example of visiting an ancestral village. When someone says that, for example, when someone says that maybe it was a very cold afternoon when my mother came back from work early. We were all maybe astonished to see her, and and maybe she informed us that we were going to visit our ancestral village the following day, something like that. So then you're just introducing us to the entire story. If you're writing about a dream, what happened before you slept? Maybe you had dinner early, or maybe during day something had happened, and so because you're not giving us background information to what led to you having that particular dream. So someone is asking, can we use more than 12 vocabularies in a writing? It is very okay. So let me continue. So that is it. So as I said, that with creative writing, you get a mark for the title and the paragraph for format. I'm going to show you that as I continue how the marks are awarded. So the don'ts or the do nots of creative writing. So the first one I'll talk about is that you do not skip lines anywhere. Class, you do not skip lines anywhere. Skipping lines is an American way of writing, but as Uganda, we use the British way of writing. And with British way of writing, we indent our paragraphs. So our mark is given to a student who has indented his or her paragraph. So, and then the other one is you do not number points or outline. I think that is also clear. Then you do not use subheading in compositions. Don't use subheadings, but you use paragraphs. Every idea on its own paragraph. Then you're not also allowed to use short forms. Short forms include don't, won't, couldn't, isn't, and many others. So in case you do that, you miss a score for spellings. So short forms are taken as spelling errors. I repeat, short forms are taken as spelling errors. So, you know, short forms in simple terms is, for example, instead of someone saying, do not, like this. Let me write it here. Do not. But then they write it as don't, like what is written here. That is a short form, and it's taken as a spelling error. Then you also make sure that you don't join the word, like do not. This is do not. So if you join the word, if you join the two words, then you lose the mark still on spelling because it doesn't make meaning. Then you're not supposed to use abbreviations. For example, ETC, UNEB, UCE. So in case you use them, you lose a mark. For now, just pay attention. I'll receive the questions. And then informal language is prohibited. Informal words, informal vocabulary, informal idioms are not supposed to be used. If you use them, you will lose a mark. So if you continue losing a lot of marks class, you at the end of it all, you might even have lost like 10 scores, and maybe the paper is being marked, or that part is being marked out of 12. Then you only get 2 scores. So it is very important for you to pay attention to some of these things so that you don't mess. And then failure to space out words in a sentence is prohibited. So words in a sentence must be given their due space. Like for example, now this one, if I join that word like this, I hope you can see. That is due space, but it is not, the word is joined, it's not space. So if you join your words, you lose scores. So that's how it's supposed to be. Then leaving unnecessary space between words is also prohibited. For example, you have a word like that. Word is also, then there is space, prohibited. It is not allowed. Leave reasonable space. And then dividing a word into two because it does not fit in a given space is not allowed. So if it happens, you're supposed to transfer all of it to the next line. For example, this word prohibited is long. So you have it and it is coming towards the end of the margin. Then you write pro, then in the next line, prohibited. Class, that is not allowed. If you do that, we take that as a spelling error. Then I continue that misuse of vocabulary, idioms, expression is also prohibited. So in case it appears, then the whole sentence is queried. I know that there's someone in the chat that has asked about vocabulary, whether it is okay to use like 12 new words of vocabulary. It is very okay, but ensure that you're using the right vocabulary. You have the right vocabulary. You have the right meaning. You have the right spelling. Because if you use it, if you misplace it, then it makes the whole sentence lose meaning. If you write a wrong spelling, then it makes you miss the mark on spelling. So it is very important that by the time you decide to use a word, please make sure that you know the meaning of that particular word. If you're using an idiom, then make sure that you know the meaning of that particular idiom. So it is very important, if you're using a phrasal verb, know the meaning of that particular phrasal verb. Don't just use words because you want to get marks and because you want to impress the teacher, and then at the end of it all, you end up failing. You see, then that is how some people come out of the paper and they're like, that paper was so easy. It was so cheap. Where was the teacher facing when you were setting that paper? You see, but in actual sense, you have already made a lot of errors, or you have made a lot of mistakes when answering because of the small mistakes that you do, which might cost you a lot. And then if the quantity of the work is very little or not enough, you get a penalty known as brevity. I know that some of you have seen teachers writing in your books, brevity. It shows that your work is very short. So you need to have at least a page and a half if you're writing, at least a page and a half. And you also don't have to write, some of you want to write over 3 pages, 2 pages to impress the teacher, but sometimes when you write a lot, you end up over repeating yourself, and you end up actually messing the entire story. Even if you had a very good plot of the story, when you write a lot, sometimes you mess up things. And then replicating of stories by picking stories from textbooks and avoiding original stories is penalized with a 0 mark, or with no mark, with a no mark, with no mark. So some of you watch movies, you watch your Nigerian movies, you watch that soap, and then you want to write the exact story in a paper. That is not allowed. You forget that even teachers also watch some of these movies. So sometimes teachers get to know that, okay, this student, this is not an original story. So if you are really tempted to write an existing story, you change some things. At least change the characters, change the setting, change the story a little, add a few things so that at least it's not like it is not replicated, or you didn't pick it from just somewhere. And then lack of punctuation mark is punishable. You're supposed to punctuate your work. I know that in S1 you did punctuation marks and you know how to use punctuation marks. Then using only one paragraph for the whole composition is punishable. Like I said, you miss a mark on paragraphing. You're supposed to have multiple paragraphs. Then wrong spelling, I saw someone had asked that in the chat, is also punishable. The moment you have wrong spellings, at least the moment you have more than 3 or 4 wrong spellings, then know that you will miss a mark. So it's very important for us to pick our words. Pick whatever you're going to use, very careful, and use words that you are sure about their spellings. And then using block paragraphs is punishable. You should use the only way of paragraphing known as the British way of paragraphing. So a block paragraph is that paragraph that has not been indented. Then unreadable handwriting unreadable handwriting is punishable. Write the letters the way they appear in the dictionary. So some of you have very good handwritings, but you join letters, you join words. So your handwriting might not be good, but make sure that it is readable, that someone can read. I'm one of those people that my handwriting isn't, so it is not that good. But at least I always make sure that every time I write, someone can actually read what I have written. So because we all can't have the best handwritings, just like we all can't really be the same. So be unique, have your handwriting, but write something that can be readable. So this is a sample scoring grid. So when we are marking creative writing, we mark format. Like I said, format carries 2 scores. We always have the title and paragraph. I know that you've seen teachers drawing this table in your book, in your papers. Then content. Content here I put 3, but depending on what you have written, content can even be 4, or it can even be 5, depending on what you have. So the content changes, but the mark for format is always 2 for paragraphing and the title. Then we have tense. Tense, all the language. So all this is language. Tense, spelling, punctuation is language. Language carries 5 scores, as you can see. So we have tense, spelling. Of course, when you're writing, you're supposed to use the past tense. Some of you use the present simple tense. Some of you want to use the present tense, like she goes, she comes home, she tells us to prepare. We go to our grandmother. Our grandmother sees us and hugs us. You know, that is not allowed. She came home very early that day. We were all astonished. She informed us that we were going to visit our grandmother the following day. We all jumped. We were all ecstatic. We were elated that at least we were going to travel to our ancestral village. You know, use the past tense. And then a spelling, I mentioned that you need the correct spellings. Then we have punctuation. So punctuation, use a full stop where a full stop is supposed to be. Use a comma when you're supposed to at least have a pause, like in a sentence. Instead of having a very long sentence, you can use a comma to pause. Then we have register or vocabulary. It also carries 1 score. A register, for example, when it comes to register, like for example, if you're writing about your ancestral village, you know, there are those words that are appropriate to your ancestral village. You talk about firewood, talk about collecting water, talk about clan, talk about relatives, talk about staple food. You know, there is that register that is associated with a village. So for example, you're writing about a dream. Then you have I dreamed, you have nightmare, you have, you know, the particular register. Like for example, you're writing about maybe your favorite teacher. There are things that you need to include, her qualities. She loves reading. Maybe talk about the fact that she's very inspirational. You know, there is that particular register for specific occasions. So that is register. Then we have sentence construction. So you need to construct good sentences and also construct a variety. I repeat, construct a variety of sentences. From S1 to S4, you have looked at a variety of sentences. For example, we have done the use of result clauses. You have done if clauses or conditionals. You've done if one, if two, if three. You need to use that in your writing. You have done direct and indirect speech. We need to see that in your writing. You have done phrasal verbs. We need to see that in your writing. That is the reason why we do grammar. So it is very important for us to play around with a number of sentences so that we get the sentence construction mark. So that is it about creative writing. And we are going to read something. Before I pick questions, this is a sample. A sample piece of a creative writing. And I will request one of us, if you know you read so well, just put up your hand and read for us what we have. I will have Cassandra. Cassandra, since you had already said something, let me have the hammer. But the hammer, what is your real name? Okay, the hammer.
This is not yet. This.
The hammer, I think your network is not good. Let me have Lenny. Lenny, you can unmute. Okay. Donna, you can unmute. Donna, I've asked you to unmute. Okay. Mariam, you can unmute. Yes, Mariam. Okay, Fungo. Fungo.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening, Fungo. You can go ahead and read.
The question is not on the screen.
Infinix, please stop doing that.
Teacher?
Fungo, you're supposed to... Are you sure it's not on the screen?
There is no question. There is only the scoring grid.
Okay, can you see it?
Yes, but zoom a little.
Okay.
It's now clear.
Okay. So my first journey by bus.
My first journey by bus. All she told me was that I had to escort her. She had to visit her grandparents in their ancestral village. It could not cross my mind that we were going that far and boarding a bus. Was my tight friend, and when she told me to escort her, I had nothing to worry about. Not excuse myself, for I knew friends had to be there for others. Okay, my first journey by bus. All she told me, my first journey by bus. All she told me was that I had to escort her. She had to visit her grandparents in their ancestral village. It could not cross my mind that we were going that far and boarding a bus. Lillian was my tight friend, and when she told me to escort her, I had nothing to. Friends had to be there for others. When the day came, Lillian told me we were to travel to Rukunjiri, and poor, I thought it was just very near, like our own village in PG. On the eve of our journey, Lillian gave me a call. She told me to reach their home early in the morning so that we could set off on time. I didn't know she had booked the early morning bus. However, I really did not need to be told to come early. That night I had no sleep. Every time I had intervals of dreams. Some were incomprehensible and others were forgotten immediately. I rose briefly and I spent some good time trying to click memory to no avail. By 4 in the morning, I was already preparing. I ironed sets of clothes, and you could think I was going to wear them all. One thing I never wanted was to shame my friend, so I kept trying on clothes to choose the best design that would suit the day. I also had to take some more clothes in case we spent some time there. When
You
we
can continue for now.
When we boarded the bus, the seats Lillian had booked were almost the only unoccupied seats. As we settled down, the driver started to hoot as he started the bus from the bus park near Gagawala Shauriako. Maybe because of the look in the entrance to see those that were boarding with unsettled minds, looking happy they had caught the bus at last. I didn't recognize the lad who sat just on the right of my seat. When the bus reached Natete, I started to get composed, and that's when I turned to look on my right. That turn was to affect my life later, and for this case, my concentration on Lillian's stories as we traveled. The young man next to me on my right was like a master manager. No sooner had I looked into his eyes than I started to steal glasses time and again, very unsettled. He appeared like a pearl that God had spent an extra pondering on if not one of the angels sent to live among men. One mind told me he could be a replica of Angel Gabriel, for his eyes rolled in his sockets like those of an owl, though more beautifully. His skin complexion that was between light and chocolate, and his feminine hands convinced me he was no violent man.
Let me. You can continue.
I can't see. Okay. Like the boys in my school who had muscles that ran like extractive roots of mahogany. I looked at him fixedly, unable to take my gaze off him and confused what I had to do. In that situation, when I had forgotten the presence of Lillian and was in dreamland building my castles in daydreams, the young angel greeted me wearing a smiling countenance. I could not tell if I wasn't dreaming, but I remember I did not miss to reply. The voice, when we greeted each other, also corrupted me. It went into ventriloquism. It was soft and feminine, like its musical quantity was comparable to the mixing of birds at dawn when the bluebird and other birds sing at intervals. It was regulated like strings on a guitar. So when he told me he liked my dress, I was sure to be swept off the seat. How on earth could I believe that beauty to appreciate me? It was nothing. No. How on earth could I believe that beauty to appreciate me? It was nothing I could easily believe, but whatever his intention was, I did not care because just talking to him was more valuable than winning presidential elections in a highly rich country like the USA. The journey was the most memorable. It was so short because all the way he kept talking to me, and that made me forget the distance. In fact, even when Lillian joined in, I was more inclined to this young man. I knew that Lillian would think, but it was beyond human control, and perhaps she would have done the same in my position. All this long, he hadn't said a word like he loved me, but I felt positive and was awaiting it. He requested me to share my contact with him. Then he beeped me. Then she beeped at me to be sure it was the actual number. I had to ascertain it was the actual
Then he
number.
beeped at me.
Then he beeped at me to be sure it was the actual number. I had to ascertain it was the actual number. He said, today's girls never tell you they don't want you to contact them, so they give you wrong numbers. I couldn't believe he could fear such a thing like me. I smiled. Never mistrust me, I said. Which name should I save? He smiled back. I prefer you give me a name you wish, but I am called Shirazi, he said. We have then reached Mbarara, and he had told me he would board off. I hope we shall stay in touch, Rani, he said as he boarded off. I gave him a confirmatory smile. My eyes remained fixed on the vents to see him depart. We waved at each other, and my heart bothered me. What if that was the last time I had seen him? I had to convince myself an optimist and ups and up I had to convince myself with optimistic thoughts, especially now that Lillian had awoken and kept comforting me. I would see him in town now that he had said he lived in Kamwocha.
Okay, so I think I think we can a feel of how it feels to actually allow me pick this is important. So Baswali, kindly give me back the host right. Baswali, please give me back the host right. I need to manage the laptop, so please. Okay, so Baswale, you have failed to give me back the host, right? Okay, thank you so much. I see you have already done that because I need to make the other, I need to give right so that I'm able to share my screen. Okay. Thank you. So at least we can continue. So that is what our story. It was I have think a challenge with the network. So sorry about that. So I was saying that at least we've read some bit of a creative writing piece, and I believe that at least you've been able to pick something from it. So that is how one of the ways you can actually write creatively. And even better than that, that is just a sample, but you can actually write better than that. Maybe before I talk about something little about functional writing, anyone with any question? Just really few questions that have not been responded to, because some of you put up your hands, yet in actual sense, we had actually responded to some of the questions. Okay, let me have Calista.
Okay, good
Yes,
evening,
Calista.
madam.
Good evening.
So, madam, my question was, when they give us an item to ask about creative writing, and so you told us about the types of creative writing, right? And so how am I supposed to know that I have to write this type? Like it should be a narrative creative writing style. How should I specify that?
Okay, thank you, Calista. So it is easy to tell depending on the question. Like, for example, maybe they tell you to describe your experiences at your ancestral village. So there you knew that you need to write a descriptive writing. Or right now, someone might even say, write about your experiences at your ancestral village. Then there you know that you're supposed to write a narrative. So that's how you get to know, but the scenario will guide you. Roy?
Thank you, teacher. So you say that when a word does not fit on a line, at the end of the line, you move to the next line. But our teacher had told us that, for example, in summary writing, if you leave that space, then the following points are going to be given half marks. Does this also apply to creative writing?
So actually, maybe say with summary writing, if the word is long and it can't fit the space that is left, you are allowed to go to the next line and you will not be penalized, because even as an examiner, they'll be able to see that that word is not able to fit there. But if it's a small word like is, are, and it can fit there, you put it there. But if it cannot fit, you go to the next line. We will be able to see that, okay, this word cannot actually fit here. And actually, these days, we don't have any halves in summary writing. With the new curriculum, there's no half. So it's either a 1 or a 0. Either 1 or a 0. Simon?
Madam, I want to write a sentence.
Simon, your network is breaking.
Madam.
Yes, Simon.
Like when I write a sentence, some step there. Then when we have to begin a sentence, do you continue?
Simon, I think your network is very bad. We can't hear you. You are breaking. So kindly get good network and then you put up your hand. Let me have Travis.
Teacher, adding on what you can read and you fail to interpret what the scenario wants. Is it either descriptive or narrative? There's some scenarios that you can read and you have no clue on what to answer.
And then it is okay. You just write. You don't have to confuse yourself with a creative or narrative. Just write what the scenario is asking you to write. It is okay. I hope, Travis, that is answered. So you just write what the scenario is asking you to write. I have main aim.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
Madam, like when they give me a composition, like the debate composition, like that kind of a composition, how can I deal with, how can I deal with?
Like a debate kind of a composition.
Yes.
For example.
Like when they want to, like when they say that on the proposal side, like two parties.
No, it will not happen. Please, class, there are some things that you don't need to stress yourself about. No one will ask you to be on the proposal side and write about it. No. Unless a question maybe, no. So our main aim, please don't disturb yourself. Don't stress yourself.
Right.
Yes. Given.
I have 3 questions. One, we did mock from LECU. It is some kind of examination body for literature and English teachers. And one of the areas they were giving marks for was style. And they were giving style in case you had apt language up to 12 words or something like that that is unique within your composition. But then another teacher in a facilitation told us that they no longer consider apt language that much. So is it necessary for me to like practice apt language and kind of apply it in case I have the ability to do so? The second thing is about the creativity that comes with idioms. Can't I like forge my own proverb or idiom somewhere like that, as long as it makes sense and I can explain it as I write? Isn't it allowed? Then the third thing, you told us about how short forms are not necessarily allowed in those kind of compositions. So my question is, what if the question itself has the short form, giving an example of something like LC1 or, okay, basically local council, but written in the question as LC. Do I necessarily have to write it in full form, or I ideally have to write it as the LC as well? That's all.
Wow. Thank you so much for your questions. So first is the first one, you talked about apt language or vocabulary, using vocabulary. So, like, I don't know whether if you saw my scoring grid, we had vocabulary, so we had register of vocabulary. So there is a mark that is given for appropriate register in vocabulary. It carries 1 mark. So when the examiner or facilitator told you that a vocabulary is not marked, I don't know what he meant, but there's a score for vocabulary, but don't have to exaggerate it towards 12. At least you can have like 7 and above. At least make sure that at least in a paragraph you have like 2. You have like 2, and also use appropriate register, because like when I showed you the scoring grid, that mark is there. Then you've talked about your own proverb, your own idiom. It is very okay. You can use it. Like why sayings are, we create our own ways saying, so it is very okay. And then in case there is a question has like LC1, mostly this comes to functional writing. If it is maybe functional writing and maybe you're writing a letter to the LC1 chairperson, I think that is okay. You're writing a letter to the LC1 chairperson, of course you'll have the sender's address, the receiver's address, then maybe to the LC1 chairperson or such and such. a village, something like that. I think it is okay depending, but there are some short forms that are not allowed. There, like now when you talk about etc, no, not short forms, actually abbreviations, etc, e.g., no. But there are some that make sense. Like for example, now when you're writing the word P.O. box in letter writing, it is an abbreviation. So it depends on the context. Then, but when you're writing, for example, is not, is, if it is even in the question, isn't, doesn't, you do the right thing. I think that's what I can say. Ian. Then lastly, John.
Thank you, madam. Madam.
Yes.
When you are writing a story, can you put songs or poems in the story?
A song and a poem, it is okay, but then you don't make it long. You don't make it long.
Okay.
It is okay, but it should not be long, because at the end of it all, you're supposed to narrate.
Even Proverbs?
Yes, Proverbs, yes.
Okay, thank you, teacher.
You're welcome. Lastly, John.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening, John.
Okay, my question is, like, how many words should the title have in a composition writing?
How many?
How many words should a title have?
A title can even have one word. A title can have two. It should not be a long sentence. It can be one word. You can even just say a nightmare. Those are two words. You can even say a visit, an unexpected visitor. So it could be one, two words, depending on actually what you're really writing about, John. I can't really say, but it should not be a sentence. The moment you have a sentence, then that ceases to be a title for creative writing. Okay. Think that is it. Someone is saying in the chat that if they tell me to use not more than 250 words and I write excess, is it okay? Yes, it is okay. It should not be a lot. Okay, and then someone talked about argumentative essays. That is true, given, very true. I think someone was asking about writing a debate thing. It is an argumentative essay. You can go and read more about an argumentative essay. Our teacher told us not to exceed 7 words when writing a title. Like I said, it depends on what you are writing. Like, for example, now you have a title like my visit to the my ancestral village in Masaka. You are a student who has studied, who has from S1, S2, S3, S4, and you give us such a title? No way. So you need to be creative. Just talk about a visit. So at times you don't have to actually tell the reader what to expect in the story. Just write a visit. Then the reader will be intrigued. You know what the title does? It's supposed to intrigue the reader to reading what you have, or give them the urge, or it's supposed to interest them to read what you have. So if you already have my ancestral village to Masaka City, so no, you need to be creative and think out of the book. Just talk about a visit, or you can say Masaka City, so that someone reads and is actually eager to find out what Masaka City is all about. Okay. Now, when it comes to functional writing, Functional writing has a number of things, but maybe I'll talk about the fact that when it comes to functional writing, we talk about letter writing. We have the formal letter, we have informal letter, we have the speech. Some of these aspects, we did them when you people were in S3. We have speech writing, we have article writing, we have writing minutes, writing a CV, writing a memo, writing a report. Yes, a report, you did reports in S1. So for sure, if someone tells me now to look at the different aspects of functional writing, we might not be able to finish. We might not be able to complete to actually we might not be able to finish because there are really a number of them, and every form of functional writing has a specific format it follows. Like for example, if you look at a report, if you don't write a report the same way you write a letter, you don't write a letter the same way you write a speech. So I will request that as you go back to your different schools, find out from your teachers. If you've not done some forms of functional writing, kindly acquaint yourself with the different forms like the memorandum. How do you write a memorandum? How do you write a speech? What is the format of writing a speech? What is the format of writing a letter? And how should the letter be punctuated? Look at how do you write a report? How do you write an incidental report or a statement? How do you write an investigative report? And how do you write a general report? So all those things, I know your teachers are going to talk about them before you do your exams. Because I really can't say now we are talking about speech. We are talking about, because there are a number of things that we needed to have talked about, but we don't have that time. Okay. Okay, someone is saying writing minutes. What if I use a proverb as a title? Mariam, that is very, very okay. Someone is saying, directions. How to write directions. Someone will even ask, how do I write a recipe? Someone is asking, teacher, what if they tell me to write a magazine? How would I write? It doesn't have a title. It does. It doesn't have a title. No one will ask you to write a magazine. Okay, someone had talked about the conclusion part. I remember saying that with the conclusion part, when it comes to creative writing, simply you're concluding what you have been talking about. If it is your village to your ancestral village, if it is your visit to your ancestral village, then at the end of it all, what happened? How did you find your ancestral village? So you conclude like that. And then you can use a proverb to conclude, you can use a wise saying, you can use a quote, and so on. Please don't hasibae. Don't stress yourself about writing a magazine. You will not even have that time. The paper is actually, I think, 2 hours. So who can actually ask you to write about a magazine in 2 hours? No. A memorandum, that's functional. That's very true. So someone says writing minutes. People, I know many of you. Oh, my goodness. Teacher, can we be asked to write a letter with a CV? No, Fungo, I think there they might either give you to write a letter or a CV. So like, for example, they might tell you to write a document to accompany the cover letter. Then there you know that you're going to write a CV. That's what they might say. So for them, they'll assume that you already have a cover letter and they ask you to write a cover letter to write a document to accompany the cover letter. Yes, so it's true. Michael says that minute writing is the easiest functional writing. Okay, so I don't even know what to do. Many people are saying minutes. So now maybe just to mention something about the CV. So when you talk about the CV, of course, you must have the title, and in which summary writing, Priscilla, we've talked about summary writing like for 2 weeks. You missed our lessons. So when you talk about the CV, maybe just to mention that the CV has a title. And for example, when you're writing a title, like for instance, I am writing, maybe let's say, Namono Priscilla's curriculum vita. You're supposed to own the CV. So that is how your title should be. Namono Priscilla's curriculum vita in capital letters. Then after that, you go to what we call personal information. So under personal information, you talk about your name, talk about your age, talk about your date of birth, talk about your sex or gender. Are you male or are you female? Talk about your district, where do you stay, or home, or maybe district of residence. Talk about a few things. You can, and then put your contact, and then that. Then after that, you go to what we call career objective. So under career objective, you can read about career objective. You can go to the internet and read about it. Then after that, you move to what we call educational background, and it should be in a table. So educational background, work experience, language proficiency should be in a table. So you put your information in a table. Like for example, for educational background, you have maybe institution, award, and then year of completion. So which institution, what was the award? What did you qualify in? Maybe, for example, maybe I will say that institution is Makerere University. Qualification or award is Bachelor of Arts in Education. A year, maybe I will say from 2016 to 2020. So that is what you do. Then after that, the work experience, it's the same thing. You move to work experience, have institution. Maybe, for example, you put, like, for example, I'll put the school I'm teaching. And then what am I doing? I'm an education officer. And then what are my responsibilities? Maybe delivering lessons. Like maybe use a Kazo Secondary School. What is, so you have institution, role. Role is education officer. And then we have responsibilities, the other side. So the responsibilities is delivering lessons, doing scheme of work, etc. Then for language proficiency, you can have language and proficiency. So language, English. So proficiency, you can put moderate, or you can put fluent, like that. Then after language proficiency, you have hobbies and interests. So you have hobbies and interests. Then after that, you have your references. Then you declare that, for example, I, Ro, so you write declaration. I, Ro Namakula, declare that the information given above in my, the information given in my curriculum vitae is the truth. Then you sign off. So that is what you do. I'm just talking about it. Someone is talking, I've seen someone saying that I talk about a vote of thanks. So a vote of thanks follows, of course, the same format of writing a speech, where you have the title, you have protocol beginning from the highest to the lowest, and you end with ladies and gentlemen, then you greet. Then after that, you say, my name is, for example, my name is Alinda Norris. I'm just giving, my name is Alinda Norris, and I am here to thank our speaker this morning. Thank you so much for allowing, for honoring our invitation to talk to us about maybe personal hygiene. Then you can say that one of the things I've learned is that it is important for a person to keep themselves clean all the time, because maybe without personal hygiene, so you give some of the things that you have learned. Then at the end of it all, you can even tell that person that we look forward to having you another time. So for speech, all forms of speech, whether you're writing a eulogy, vote of thanks, or you're writing an informative speech where some people always say general speech, you have title, which is in capital letters. You have protocol, beginning from the highest. So for example, the head teacher, the deputy head teacher, the director of studies, the teaching and the non-teaching staff, the students' body, ladies and gentlemen. Then after that, you greet. You put a full stop and greet. Good morning. Then you introduce yourself. My name is so and so, and I'm here to talk about such and such a topic. I'm here to talk about the effects of bullying. Then you continue. So that is with a speech. And the eulogy, of course, with the eulogy, that one is more of emotional, because you're talking about someone's life, someone who is already, or maybe someone who is deceased, or a dead person, or someone who has lost their life. Okay, then someone is saying that around the education, do you start with the year of completion or the year you started from? You start with, for example, so you can say, of course, the year you started from. Like, for example, personally, I would say that because you start with the highest. Like, for example, my qualification is a degree, so I'll move to degree, then go to advanced level, then go to O level, then primary, like that. So, for example, I will say that institution is Makerere University. Award is bachelor's, a bachelor's degree with bachelor's degree, bachelor's degree of arts in education, something like that. Then year, I will say from 2016 to 2019. That is what you're supposed to do. Then is there a possibility of the examiner setting one part of the writing either creative or functional? No. So class, if it is functional, both the questions will be functional. If it is creative, both the items will be creative. Madam Eulogy, please. So Hasiba, eulogy is just still, it follows the same thing. But now with eulogy, you talk about the good things of a person. You can talk about the education of the person. How did you meet the person? How has the person influenced your life? etc. Dialogue. Okay, so class, you might not be able to finish all these things, but kindly get time. You can have discussions with other people. Because of time, I also need to have supper, and I also need to take some water. Okay. Let me see. Anyone with a burning question? Let me just pick these 3 hands. I am seeing Frank, Roy, and Baswali. Okay. Kindly, let me start with Frank. Frank, kindly ask. Okay, Roy.
Yes, teacher. So I'm asking, When I read the Oxford Dictionary, the part of a CV, it says that it's enough to only write the address, your email, and your telephone number.
Wow. So Roy, maybe let me tell you one thing is kindly as Uganda we have our own format. So the Oxford Dictionary is used by a number of countries. So kindly stick to what your teachers tell you, but not the dictionary. The formats, actually the dictionary can confuse you, even with a letter writing, the dictionary has different formats. So if you're going for functional writing, seek for clarification from your teachers, not the dictionary. The dictionary can help us with the meanings and vocabulary and other things.
Yes, teacher.
Baswali. Yes, Roy.
Another question. Assist me with how to write a dialogue.
So maybe quickly for a dialogue, the format is you have the title, which is always in capital letters. For example, a dialogue between Teacher Christine and Roy Namakula about environmental conservation. Then after that, you move to the introduction. It is always it introduces you to the entire part. Maybe you say that maybe Teacher Christine and Roy are seated under a mango tree around the staff room. Then after that, you now go to the dialogue, and of course you use the block format where you have Teacher Christine Roy. Then maybe you start by saying, "Good morning, teacher. How are you doing?" Like that. Then I'm like, "Good morning, Roy. I'm doing well," smiling. Then you have stage directions. So the stage directions are put in brackets, smiling, waving. Then at the end of it all, you have what we call the conclusion. And the conclusion, you can well, after the dialogue, then you say that maybe thank you so much, Teacher Christine, for your time. And then now you say that the two of them Teacher Christine goes towards staff room while Roy walks towards her classroom block, something like that. That's what you're supposed to do.
Okay, thank you, teacher.
You're welcome. Let me have Baswali. That is the last person that I'm picking.
Madam, forgive me for the other time. Maybe I had tapped in and I had no option. But madam, on that issue of writing a CV, is it okay if I include the skills?
Yes, it is very okay. Actually, it's skills and competencies. It's okay. What I've given you is just some of the basic things that should be included, but you can include skills and competencies.
Okay, madam.
You're welcome. So someone says that, teacher, how do we write a eulogy? Please, it appeared in my mock paper, but I wasn't taught. So Fungo, if you were taught the format of writing a speech, if you were told the right format of writing a speech, so the eulogy follows the same speech. Like for example, when I say that maybe I'm in a funeral, because a eulogy is a speech written to praise or to praise or to pay a tribute to someone who is dead or someone deceased. For example, I say that maybe if I'm assuming maybe the member of parliament of maybe Masaka City, the parents of the deceased, friends, fellow mourners, ladies and gentlemen.
Excuse me,
Good
madam.
afternoon. Then you continue and then now say that we are all sad. So maybe you can continue and say that maybe I know that we are all sad, having lost one of the most hardworking, I don't know, someone today. So then you talk about the fact that maybe, I'm assuming that maybe, for example, it's still Christine. Then you mention that maybe Christine has been a friend to many people, and that is why we are all here witnessing so many people who have come to mourn her. About Christine, what were her qualities? Talk about someone who is dead. You don't mention the robber or what. Only mention the good things. So talk about the father. She was very friendly to people, and she loved chatting a lot with people. You can even, and then now when you talk about a eulogy, you need to make people at least you need to bring a light moment to the mourners, because people are sad. You can even mention that I remember the days when we were in high school and we didn't like prep at all. When the matron would come around looking for us, we would hide under the bed. You know, it makes people at least laugh and think about the good things that this person has gone with. Then you can say that, Christine, we will miss you so much, but we believe that you are at the right place, because we all know that we shall join you in future. You know, that is how you're supposed to write a eulogy. I'm just giving you a few things that you need to include, but you can include other things. So Afungo, I think I've answered that. I don't know why I'm still seeing people's hands up. People, I need to move. The lesson I had requested, actually, I told Mr. Kaziba that this lesson was supposed to end at 8:30. How does the title of the eulogy go? It is just, no, it is in simple terms, a speech to be presented at maybe Christine's funeral ceremony, something like that. So Fungo, that is it. Let me see any question. I don't know why people's hands are still up. Maybe a speech to be presented at Christine's funeral ceremony in Masaka on such and such a day. So when you look at a speech, it should have the topic. What are you going to? You should first have a speech about the topic. When are you presenting it? And where are you presenting it? No, it's not necessary to include the speaker. It is not necessary to include the speaker, because already you're even going to introduce yourself. My name is so and so. Ed at least has given us something there. Madam, do we sign off on all functional writings? Yes. What aspect of functional writing? No, not all. Like, for example, giving directions, recipe, we don't sign off. But even speech, we don't sign off. We only sign off for letters, report, minutes, CV, memorandum. Yes. Someone has even said you can conclude with that. But then, you can you can actually continue with this discussion in the WhatsApp group. You never know. You might be able to. Do we use a block or index format when writing a letter? No. Actually, when writing a letter, if it's a formal letter, your address should slant. Krish, your hand has been up for long. What is it? Krish, I've asked you to unmute.
Yes, good evening, madam. Good evening, madam.
Good evening. Good evening.
I just wanted to ask that do we use an index method or a block method when writing a formulate?
What do you mean in terms of?
The block method is the one, the addressee's address is the what?
Okay.
At the line, at the margin, or
So
the index. It's the one
I'm going to
slanted.
share my screen shortly. Kindly look at my screen very well. You have asked, and I have something to do with letter writing here. Are you seeing that? Class, are you able to
Yes.
see that? Yes, that is how you're supposed to write your address. So the first address is supposed to be slant. Then for that date comes to the same. You're supposed to have it at the same line, the same what, the same place where you had started the school or the address, like that. Then the receiver's address is supposed to be written in block like that. You don't indent, or sorry, you don't slant. It should not slant like that. Miriam. So Krish, I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, good.
Yes, madam. Thank you, madam.
You're welcome. Yes, Miriam.
Okay, my question is, like, before writing the date, should you leave space or not?
No, don't skip a line. And no, when you're writing your date, you should be well punctuated, like the way what you're seeing on the screen. At the same time, some people forget this dot here. I don't know whether you can see my cursor. There's a dot there, then there is another dot after O. Yes, someone has even circled it. So there is a dot there, and there is another dot here. So please don't forget those dots. Some of you forget that and you miss the mark on punctuation. Same this side.
Okay, because
Then when
we
you're
are taught
signing off, let me just do when you're signing off, you are supposed to do that. I'll say title. Yes. I don't know that the question that Roy has is about the letter. Yes, Roy.
Okay, the question I have is not about a letter. It is, I'm asking if autobiographies and biographies are examinable.
Don't bother.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So maybe we can have Roy, you can actually close with a word of, let me first look through the chat. Could someone post the link to the WhatsApp group here? Someone is asking for it. Oh, someone is saying we can't discuss on WhatsApp because it's only admin. Oh, okay. So maybe before let me just look for the link to the WhatsApp group. Before I close so that Pearl is able to join the WhatsApp group. So that is the link to the WhatsApp group. You can join so that Pearl, you don't miss out on some of those lessons, like mathematics happens every day, I think at 5. Okay. Okay, let me request a volunteer to pray. Haro, you can pray. Yes, Ruth, you can pray. I've asked you to unmute. Let me have, okay, Baswali, you can pray.
Okay.
Let's
Let's humble ourselves for our prayer. Mighty King of Glory, Father in heaven, we thank you for this wonderful session that we have had. We believe that we have
Ruth, I think we lost you. Yes, Baswali.
Let's humble ourselves for the word of prayer. Loving Father, the creator of heaven and earth, thank you for this time that we've tuned in for the lesson and you've enabled us to come to a full stop of it. Loving Father, let the words that we've heard from our Madam stay stuck into our minds such that once they come in our final exams, we are able to attempt each and everything. Lord, may you bless our teacher who has guided us through the session and the entire group. I have prayed all this through the mighty name of my Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Baswali, for that prayer. And enjoy your supper for those who have not had supper like me. And may God bless you all. And for sure, I wish you the very best in your exams. Believe in yourself. You don't need to panic. Trust what you have, and God will guide you. I see you. I'm waiting for the good news. People telling me that they excelled and all that. So have a good night.
Oyo. Na eriyo lwe wakawala